Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us virtually for today's thought provoking session on new age GenAI solutions. We're going to focus on RAG strategies, how enterprises apply drivers RAG advanced techniques to drive GenAI innovation. I am Vijay Morampudi, leading AI initiatives at Axtria, and it's my honor to moderate this engaging panel discussion alongside my co-moderator, Shibaji Chatterjee, Senior Manager at Yonder. We have an esteemed lineup of industry experts and thought leaders joining us today from various domains. Their domain expertise and hands-on experience with leveraging RAG techniques will provide invaluable insights for all of us. As enterprises across industries are increasingly leveraging retrieval augmented generation techniques, popularly known as RAG, to develop cutting-edge generative AI solutions, this session promises to be an invaluable resource for all the attendees. Over the next 30 minutes, our esteemed panelists will delve into their real-world experiences, best practices, and proven strategies for successfully leveraging diverse RAG techniques to drive innovation and solve complex business challenges across various domains. Without further ado, let me kickstart the session. My first question to Karan. Karan, how do you envision RAG being utilized to address challenges within the life insurance domain? Specifically, how can RAG technology enhances processes such as risk assessment, policy underwriting, or customer service in life sciences?
Uh, well, looking at the industry, we are a highly regulated industry and we have a lot of compliances to take care of. Looking at the emergence of LLMs, be it in trying to answer questions around product details, trying to answer questions around whether a particular rule set applies or not, is very context specific and it is very dynamic. It will be very interesting to see how RAG could actually achieve this or crack this, given the fact that it also makes the entire system very open book, and it's not limited to the knowledge of the specific industry or a specific team in question. Apart from that, we can also see. I also envision, yes,
Go
rule
on,
sets that could actually help in making the CX much more uh, much more dynamic. That would be an interesting thing to look at in the life insurance space.
Okay, great, Karan. And going forward to Kiranjit, right? So Kiranjit, you are part of programmatic ad tech domain. And my question here would be similar, but from your domain standpoint, how our RAG methods are using and helping your industry and giving the leverage for your business use cases.
Sure. Thanks, Shivaji. So, be it any domain, the first and the foremost thing is to understand the business requirement and then take a decision if RAG is really required or not, right? And especially in our programmatic ad tech, we have various jargons that are used, such as CPM, CTR, CPCs, and etc., which are used to measure the impact of a particular solution. And most of these solutions are used by traders, advertisers, account managers, who plan, optimize, and even measure the ad tech campaigns, right? So the data that we acquire to build contains rich amount of information specific to ad tech domain, which definitely are not leveraged by the pre-trained LLM models, right? That's one of the disadvantages, and this is where the application of RAG comes in wherein the domain data that we have from various sources are trained on to create the right context for the LLM models. That would again help rather to reduce the number of token fed into that model, and which will also save the tokens cost also, right? And at MIQ, we have been experimenting with various methods to make sure that the traders and advertisers' lives are easier by using RAG, as it's cost effective and saves huge amount of time, utilizing the resources. With the contextual information as per the inputs given by the traders, the right information is shared with them that utilizes the ad tech jargons and helps them in managing the campaigns in a more effective way to generate a good revenue out of it, at least not in a negative way, so that the campaigns are bit successful.
Yeah, that's great to understand that how it is leveraging for your improving your efficiency for campaigning, right? So if we change the industry and come back to Shivani, who is part of banking industry, and definitely banking is also highly regulated industry, and we want to understand how RAGs are being used for the banking industry overall.
Thanks, Shivaji. So, as far as the banking industry is concerned, we have many areas where applicability of RAG in banking is significant. But we have realized that over this period, there are two areas where we have seen a significant progress. One is the customer service operations, where RAG is used to basically generate personalized response to customer query by retrieving the relevant information from historical, conversations, and as well as the customer specific information. So this not only speed up the response, but it also enhance the accuracy as well as the personalization, which is very, very critical for the customer satisfaction. Then another area that we have started using RAG is the control and compliance for business operations. So we have seen that banks have started using RAG for the control gap assessment analysis. So once the gap is identified, RAG is used to categorize and analyze this gap. So it helps us to determine whether the gap that has been identified, it is because of the breach of internal policies, or it is basically non-compliance of the regulations. It also assesses whether the gap has happened in past in any other business line, or there's a potential of it to be happened in other line of business. So this has led to the enhance and as well as the accuracy of the whole assessment process. So yes, so these are the two areas where the bank have started using RAG.
Great, Shivani. I think compliance is one of the critical business use case for a banking domain. It's good to see that how you people are solving it. Moving on, my next question is to Prashant. Prashant, can you tell us how you built a GenAI system where you are leveraging the autonomous agentic architecture to manage the advertising data within the ad tech ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about the specific solutions that you are developing with this technology to optimize the ad targeting, personalized user experience, or improve the campaign performance?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Vijay. So basically, in our approach, we have moved away from a typical RAG application, mostly due to the nature of ad tech data. So as Kiranjit was telling, most of the data that we deal are structured tabular data, which is typically stored in a SQL database. And how we envision AI here is that it's not something which is only taking the information, summarizing the information, or concluding something for you. It is actually taking decision based on that. So what we do is that we deploy an agentic RAG architecture. And what this agentic RAG architecture, mostly they consist of two components. One is some kind of retrieval component, which we typically do via smart SQL agents or fine-tune model for, again, SQL schema calling. And on top of that, we have React agents. So these React agents, basically, they go through a loop of thought, action, and response. So I'll just give you one kind of quick example to help you understand how we are leveraging it. Let's say a person comes to our site and he wants to ask about performance of a particular campaign, and he wants to know about how he can improve the campaign. So in that case, what we basically do is that the agent first calls a particular SQL agent or CSV agent or a particular database agent to first retrieve the data. Then there is a prompt template which consists of thought and your action and observation, basically. So the first thought will be, okay, I need to retrieve the campaign data, so I need to use this particular tool. So that tool could be a SQL agent, could be an OpenAI function calling agent. Based on that, it will retrieve the data. Now the observation will be okay. It could be something like, okay, I can see that CTR has been declining over the past six weeks. So what we can do? So the action could be, okay, if the CTR is declining, maybe we need to do creative refreshes or we need to produce new ad copies. Now it goes through this loop of thought, action, observation, thought, action, observation. So once it knows that I need to generate new ad copies or I need to kind of generate new creative, something like that, now it will call the next agent, which will be used to retrieve earlier ad copies and create replica of those ad copies and refresh all those creatives. And this is how we kind of go in a loop in our industry, because our use case is not only that you need to summarize the data and tell it to the client. So it's about creating smarter agents which can summarize the data for you and tell you what the best action to take so that you improve the performance in real time.
That's great, Prashant. I think handling the structured data is a bit more challenging compared to handling documents, right, where we have more factual information. It's good to hear that the agents that you developed, right, agents are good in planning and doing the critique on the responses that you are generating and showcase to the user, right? Good to know. It's a great concept that the industry is evolving in. Moving on, my next question is to Ashok. Ashok, can you tell us how the RAG is being used in the media domain to leverage real-time feed of the news articles?
Yeah, sure. I guess in media publishing space, we generally say content is the king, but we say that right content at right time is really making a difference to the media companies. And there's a lot of articles being written on geopolitics, etc. But then you're buying for a head mind space in with the clients and users. So engagement is the key sort of business KPI we kind of work towards. For us, a lot of articles we publish, and then how do we surface it at right time, more relevant content. So personalization and recommendation for the users is very important. Um, so imagine, we publish a lot of articles on a daily basis. Where RAG is helping us is to, use the base model, which is kind of trained over a period of time, and bring in real time articles being published into the model so that they can process it and be more relevant, in real time to the users, that they get, say, mobile push notifications or instant emails, that based on their usage history, the topics they are interested in, there is something new has been published. So we are keeping them engaged. We are the primary source of information the users are looking for, and that helps us keeping them more engaged. They come to our platform quite often, and then it has a direct business impact on our engagement metrics and ultimately revenue. So that's the kind of use case we have been using our racks for, to improve the engagement with the users.
Yeah, so maybe we can go
Yeah.
to Shivani and interestingly understand the similar type of question related to personalization, because you were talking about compliance, we are talking about gap analysis, but at the same time you are also talking about customer centricity or personalization, right? So how RAG generated content and the usage of RAG, how it is using for the personalization for the multi-source textual data what bank has, right? So can you elaborate on that?
Thanks for asking this question. So if you look the question, so it actually it has two-step process, right? So one is retrieval and the second is generation. So when you talk about the retrieval, so first we use the dense retrieval techniques to basically to search the vast amount of repository of the textual data. So these algorithms that basically represent the text in the high dimensional vectors. And then we also search to the multi-source textual data. So we use different technique. So some few are the API integration. Others are disturbed filtration technique. We have resource ranking as well. And once we have data, we try to find out whether it is relevant to customer query or not. For that, we use the BERT-based model. Once we are ensured that the data is relevant to the customer query, then we use the generative AI models to create a personalized natural language based response to the customer query. So this is how we, generate personalized response to the customer queries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. Prashant, I want to ask you a question, right? You talked about the tech use case. Can you tell us how did you deploy the agents and how your agents are collaborating in the domain for the specific use case that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I would again talk in terms of a step that how we do that. So the first thing that you need is to basically retrieve the numerical data. So for that, we typically use SQL agent or some kind of Postgres agent, CSV agent, or Pandas agent. So these are typically either the foundational models, which are either fine-tuned for any particular client schema, or these models have been exposed with few sort example of how to kind of retrieve the data. But then we came across few complex scenarios where the data keeps on changing, the schema keeps on changing client by client. So in that case, what we do is that we retrieve the data based on OpenAI function calling agent. So these functions basically they act as a wrapper to get the slice of data which the customer is actually asking about. The logic of getting the data is kind of entirely driven by the LLM itself. So it understands what the user is actually asking about and then retrieve only those particular slices of data that's needed to answer user's query. So once it kind of retrieves the data, the second agent that we use typically are React agents. So as I told, there are many React agents. There are zero-shot React agents. There are conversational React agents. So all of these agents, at its very basic, they do some kind of chain of thought of reasoning, COT reasoning, which is kind of typically called. It understands, it sees the data and then makes a decision that what is the next probable action that I need to take. Apart from that, as we deal with mostly numerical data and numerical computation are typically, so LLMs are not good at doing numerical computations, especially floating point computation, because they don't understand math like me and you understand. So for that, what we do is that we deploy Python REPL agents. So any kind of mathematical functioning, any kind of reasoning like that is basically offloaded to a Python REPL agent. Then we also have various kind of fine-tuned models which are used for specific use cases. For example, when you are showing the data to the user, you need to make sure that you are formatting it with HTML. So we have a specific agent which does the formatting of the output in let's say HTML format. And yeah, so these are some of the kind of agents that we work with right now.
Great, Prashant. I think the collaboration across the agents is a key concept for building a great solution.
And the good thing is that these agents, they actually work in parallel. So one agent has the autonomy of calling other agent if it needs its help in doing something. Let us say the SQL agent, it retrieves the information. It can directly call the React agent after that to do some reasoning and then call the Python REPL agent to do any mathematics, finally calling the HTML formatting agent to make sure that everything is formatted in nice UI. So they interoperate basically.
Yeah, I think leveraging tools to complete the task, especially on the structured data, is a great way to build a good solution. Great. The next question, what is the prevailing preference for an enterprise? Is it like using open source models or investing in commercial models for implementing AI solutions?
I'll take that. Uh, I mean, we've looked at the maturity of the industry when it comes to services which are provided by the commercial vendors on things which are as simple as an avatar generation combined with voices to as complicated as, how do you combine that to a RAG model which is giving you predicted answers? How and the answer would be looking at the majority of the industry and looking at the criticality of the project at hand. How what is the time consumption that you see from a resource point, from a training point, and how important is it for the turnaround to be acceptable? And there are vendors which are in their maturity stages. I would say at present the industry would be looking at more commercial use cases, and as we mature in understanding the integrations and making the acceptable tats on the responses, we would actually be looking at more adoption of the open source platforms.
Yeah. I would just like to chime in because there are again, like as Karan told, multiple aspects to it. You'll have to understand what your basic use case is. So if your use case is just RAG, In that case, smaller open LLMs like a Llama or a Mistral 7B, they actually achieve better RAG compared to a GPT 3.5 Turbo. You can kind of look into the benchmarks. Other thing is that it's about privacy and hosting also. So we have actually seen clients which are worried about their data, that if we actually use OpenAI or let's say Claude model, how they use our data to actually train their model or fine tune their model in future. So in that case, smaller model, specifically open source model, they can be hosted on V800 GPUs in our infra or client infra. So it kind of gives them the confidence also at this point.
Okay, great. Thanks, Prashant. I just take one last question from the audience, right? This question talks about how do enterprise kickstart their GenAI projects, right? What approach do they take? Should they start with one POC and then scale it up, or are they experimenting with 2, 3 POCs and then deciding which one to scale based on the outcomes and feasibility?
Okay, so let me take this question. So, Vijay, usually enterprise prefer to basically start with one POC to validate the technique and minimize the risk. Once successful, they scale it up. However, multiple POC explanation, for different use cases can be insightful because it provides the wide range of option for scaling.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll have something similar to add. Yes, a multiple, for similar sort of problem statement, you would have typically 2 3 types of solutions, be it baseline algorithm changes, and so in different POCs, so that you can compare the performance. But definitely it comes down to your key factors around scalability, maintenance, and ease of deployment. Because those are the some of deciding factors that which one you want to go with, especially for organizations where they do not have some historical learnings that okay, which one is the best approach. Then once you kind of go with a typically low risk approach, you tend to do sort of A/B testing as well, that okay, let's reflect the solutions to different set of audience with say 2 particular solutions, and then figure out in real time that okay, which one is gonna work better over a longer period of time than what we have got in the POC period. So yeah, to summarize, you typically go with 2 3 POCs before you kind of deploy widely and on a larger scale.
Yeah, I think just we need to just measure and balance between small term and the long term goals. That's it.
Thank you, everyone, for your great, insightful discussion. And as a summary for our roundtable discussion, I can take out 5 points. So one of the point can be that quality versus latency, right? So as we all know that we are going through the POC, and through the POC, we have to basically balance between these two. And as an organization, definitely you are taking care of it, different models that you are basically taking care in your journey. And then once you are doing production deployment, you are basically taking care of a lot of issues of scalability, different issues of preferences. And all it comes to our discussion where we have covered most of the industries like banking, media, like ad tech, and then different supply chain and all that, right? So everywhere the use cases are different, and we are almost doing similar aspect. And many of the things what we have also understood that RAG is not the enough, right? Sometimes we have to use agents, sometimes we have to use different methods on top of RAG to fulfill our use cases and all the benefit that we are getting from RAG. Thank you so much for joining this call. Thank you all. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.